Hello and welcome to Books and Beyond. I'm your host, Jimmy Bennett, and Books and Beyond is a show where we try to highlight local talent, authors, artists, comedians, singers, whoever. Call it a voice for the unsung heroes of our community. And I myself have been an author. I'm a chef by trade, but I've written 3 books, all dealing with William Gillette and Gillette's Castle, murder mystery set in the early 1900s, A Case of the Flying Corpse, Accounts of William Gillette, and my newest book, The Floating Corpse, which is now out on Amazon. I hope you'll check it out. It's a sequel to my first book, and I think it took a nice turn with the story. Also, part of what I do is I am co-chairman of the Southeastern Connecticut chapter of the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. And that's a group of writers and authors, illustrators, publishers who meet once a month, the third Monday of every month at the Groton Regency at 6:30. And we encourage each other, try to help each other out, make connections, network. And so anybody who is interested in writing or have written and would like to join our group and, come down and check us out. We're a great group of knuckleheads,
Yes, we are.
We are, we're very open, very friendly, and we're really hoping this year to really step up our exposure to the community. And one of the things we're going to be doing is, in a few weeks, the Guard Theatre in New London has their Winter Cinema series, which they'll be showing movies, a lot of great movies. And our authors will be at the cinema showings, and before and after, you can meet the authors, buy a signed copy of the book, and come and see what we're all about. One of my favorite members, Jane Desrosiers, is here with me today. Jane, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for having me here today.
Yep. So before we get to your books, just a little background on you. What was you're retired now, but what was your day job?
My day job before, I worked for 45 years in healthcare information, so medical records, in the dim dark ages of handwritten records into the technology of today, and then ending up in risk management when things go bad. I was the one that came in to kind of smooth things out and try and figure out how to solve the problems.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right.
So I did a lot of technical writing, a lot of reports for federal and government and local agencies, so to prove how great the hospital was, and so that's what kept me on my toes for a while. So that got a little boring, and then this was another way to exercise my pen.
Yes, I was going to say. Now, how did you get into what made you come about to write?
Well, it's like I didn't sit down one day and say, "Oh, I am just going to write this trilogy." I happened to be at my day job and sitting down with the attorney for the hospital and for the insurance adjuster. And we were talking about a particular case. And after we were done with that, we were just sitting around talking just like this. And I said, what do you guys do when, we're not doing this? And one guy said, well, I fish. And the other guy said, well, he said, I really like to return to Maine because that's where I was born. And so we talked, and it was just kind of like this little idea was planted. And I got back to my desk, and I sat down, and I wrote a little story about this guy, the insurance guy, as a little kid, who went fishing in Maine. So I had a column, and then I looked at it, and I said, well, I've got all this white space. I said, maybe I'll make it like a little newsletter, And so I created this little town in Maine, and all these different people. There was an editor, and then there was a cub reporter, and then someone who wrote the food column, making food out of very strange ingredients. And so it was kind of a comical thing. And I wrote it for probably about 10 years.
Oh.
So, and it was like write a copy, write a news story, something for the day, I mean, and it was truly kind of funny. It was very funny. It was done in a dialect, and then I put it away. And every once in a while I would say to somebody, what do you think? And they would go, well, it's really funny, but I have no idea what you should do with it. So I'm thinking, how like you go into a general store and you see the little weekly newspapers or, newsletters
Right.
like that. You pick up and you go, oh, they're kind of funny, and all that. And so that's what I had in my mind. And so I tried again and again, looking for people to, give me a direction. I was just looking for it. So finally one day I met a woman, and she was a teacher at UConn. I was working at UConn at the time. I had left the hospital, but I was still in the same field in health information. And she looked at my information, I gave it to her, and she said, "Oh my God," she said, "you have all these great characters." She said, "You've been writing about them for 10 years. You know them so well." She said, "Just pick one person and tell the story." And I said, wow, somebody finally validated that what I had written was actually could do something else, And then she said, "And that'll be $80." So,
Wow.
so that started my relationship with her. And then over the course of time, I joined her writing group because it was I had not gone to school for writing classes. I didn't have a master's in fine arts or any of that. I mean, creative writing was in high school,
Right.
And when you're looking like Snoopy, it was a dark and stormy night, on the typewriter, and I mean that had been about it. So I joined her group, and it was interesting because we would all write something each month and then give each other feedback, and then she would give us feedback. So over the course of the time it took me to write the book, I met with different people coming in and out. I'll never forget the first meeting. There was one woman who was just about set to publish her book, and we were all very excited for her, And I asked her, I said, "Well, how long did it take you to write the book?" And she said, 10 years. And I was like, 10 years? No. I have other things to do.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be done in 6 months, So 4 years later, 4 years later, Gone Fishing the Hook was finally ready, and then it was try to find a publisher. And then I had joined an organization, the Women's Writing Guild from New York, and I went there and went to a pitch session with the agents. You know how you sit around, you go in and you got 3 minutes to sell it, and anybody that I talked to went, "Wow, that's a really great story, but can you just do this? Can you do that?" And so I just kind of let it go again. So it just sat there. And then finally one day I said, okay, nobody's doing anything. I've got to do it myself. So I just started sending it out. And I finally got a publisher that said, "We like it. This is what it's going to cost you." Because obviously I'm not James Patterson or Robin Cook or anybody like that. "Here's what's going to cost you." I talked to some friends at the time who I knew had published books. And they said, "Sounds like a good offer. You're going to get paid more royalties per copy than they were." So I said, and they said, "Don't you want to just see it in print? You spent all this time on it. Don't you want to hold it in your hands and say, 'Look what I did'?" And I was like, you know what? You're right. That's exactly what I want to do.
Yep. I understand that. That was one of the things that I learned at Kappa, my first meeting. And I'll never forget, because I hadn't even finished my first book, The Case of the Flying Corpse. But I had a good idea, I thought, and I was working on it hard. And I went to learn a little bit more about, the publishing business and stuff like that. And at the time, Rich Laporta, the man from Husky Press, sat there, and he dispelled me of this notion, which I think a lot of people out there had, and I did, that you'd write a book, you'd send it into some publisher, they'd say, "Oh, that's fantastic. You know what I mean? We're going to print this book. Here's a check. Let's send you on tour, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And he basically said, no, they don't really do that anymore. They hardly ever read books. They don't, you know what I mean? And they charge you to read your books. And they want to see how well you do, with your marketing, and, how many followers you have on Facebook, how many followers you have on Twitter. You know what I mean?
There has to be like 6 of you doing all of this stuff besides the writing.
Right.
To continue to promote it and get yourself out there.
And that was really an eye-opener for me. It didn't discourage me, but it was, you know what I mean? It made me go down a whole different route of self-publishing,
Right.
Which is good and bad in different ways.
Right, yeah, because it all depends on, what you want for your book. How do you want it to look? Do you just want it to be up on Amazon by itself, and that's it? You don't want to go any further with it, because there are certain things, and I think we've also learned at Kappa, as we've had different speakers come in to tell us what things need to be in a book so that it can be in a bookstore or on Amazon or be saleable. You know,
Right.
it's not just it's got a pretty cover and it's got a good story. It's got to have a lot of other things that people want to see.
Right, right. And,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. Of course, would I like to be picked up by a publisher? Well, I'd like, you know, some professional people to look it over
Yeah.
and say, you know, oh, well, you should change this. This needs to be blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like you say, you know, a lot of it is, for me, you know, just to have the book, to take it to my family home in Long Island, put it up on the bookshelf with the rest of the, you know, family books
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and just say, you know, hopefully, you know, my great-great-grandchildren or great-grandniece or you know, nephew
Yeah.
will pick it up one day and go, oh, wow, you know.
Right.
It's like seeing a painting of one of your, you know, relatives from, you know, 50 years ago.
Sure,
You know, you
yeah.
look at it and go, wow,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, he
this
did
guy-
that, yeah.
this guy painted it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, we definitely do it for the love more than for the money.
Oh yeah,
you
definitely,
know.
definitely do it for that. Yeah, if you think that you were going to, you know, write a book and publish it, and then the money would flow in,
Right.
Yeah, then no, that doesn't happen. You know, ask my accountant; he'll say, "Oh, a loss again? Yeah, well, you know, I'm trying,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's not as bad of a loss as last year, right? Right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then it's like, you know, so he's, you know, so going on to writing the second and the third one, because it was a story that just kind of fell out. You
Yep.
know, it wasn't like a one and done thing. That's what, you know, I kind of thought, oh, this will be one book. But then when I got to the end of it, I was like, no, the story's not done. And it was, as I've told people, it's the strangest experience that I've ever had. It was like, again, I didn't know what that story was. I mean, again, I had created these people, this wonderful town in Maine. It was all about fishing. That's how they made all of their money and their livelihood, all centered around the different seasons of fishing. But that wasn't what the story was. The story was about the people.
Right.
The little quirky characters, but also my main character, Ethel, who was always fishing for more information about her mother. Her mother had passed away when she was born, and so over the years, her father had raised her, but he was a curmudgeon, so he didn't hand out too terribly much information along the way. So that's the undercurrent, if you will, keeping with the fishing metaphor, that always kept the storyline going. But within each book, there was something that popped up, a little plot twist, a little mystery, something that had to be solved, and something that she went after because she was a journalist, and that was the kind of person she was.
Ah,
So that's how she continued to follow things through. She had a job at the local paper, and the editor there, he imparts a lot of wisdom in the story, and took her under his wing and really nurtured her abilities. I mean, she had some good sense, but going forward, all about how they did that. So again, it's always searching for her family, you know, her mother's family, and sometimes she forgot that her father had family. You know, she had
Right.
aunts and uncles and all of that in town, and all these cousins, and then she also had her life family, all the people in town that supported her. So you have a lot of that whole story going through of trying to find the certain person in the family, and trying to, as she finds out at one point, she has a half sister that she never knew. So there's a little mystery as how we
Right.
got to that part, and trying then to try and find that person, and then finally realizing what family was all about.
so that's the theme of your book is based on this woman,
Ethel, yep,
and she's a journalist in Maine,
yep.
and this is her search.
Her
All
search.
three books, they sort of blend into one into the other.
Yep. I mean, I try in each one, because just in case you happen to pick one up, I give you a little refresher, but not too terribly much. I mean,
Right.
the beginning, the hook really has the basis for the story. You get all the characters, you get why they do
Right.
what they do, and all of that. You have the Ruthie who runs the bakery. You have her father, Eddie. And you have Caleb, the editor for the paper, and there's the diner in town, and and all of those. So all of these quirky little characters just continue to build, and they become, where they start out as kind of one-dimensional, like they were in a newsletter, then they become two-dimensional and three-dimensional. So the characters grow throughout the three books. And it's quite an interesting story. Like I said, if you had asked me when I started the first book, what would would the story have ended up that way, I would have told you, no, there's no way. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, because I didn't know, but it told me every time I sat down to write, the story just came out, and just it was the funniest thing.
I tell people that a lot of times too. They ask me, where do you get your ideas and how do you, and it really, the writing process, you don't, you have a general idea of what you want to do.
Sure.
And, mine being crime mysteries, I have an end result.
Right.
And then I have the start.
Yeah.
And then in between, well, how did it get to
Right,
that
yeah,
point?
yeah.
And how did they figure it out?
Right,
Blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. So in some ways, I'm always going back a few chapters. I got to put something in to make sure that it makes sense.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah,
when
there's
this comes
there's
up,
always a lot of that.
there's always
Yeah.
a little-
Oh.
and I try to make sure that, I don't skip over parts and stuff, because that just irritates me when I read other books and it's like, what?
Where did that come
Where
from?
did that come from?
Where did that come from?
It was like the old Charlie Chan movies, which is how I really got into writing these old Pulp Fiction, is I love the old Charlie Chan movies
Yeah.
and the old Sherlock Holmes movies and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it was always that, the last scene, he'd go, but, and he'd pull out but I just got a telegram from
some
that
random
says that-
thing, yeah.
Yeah, you're well, how was I supposed to know that?
Yeah, right.
That's not fair,
Yeah.
So I always try to make sure
Yeah.
But I tell people it's almost like they say the sculptures. They say that the statue's already in the rock. They just got to take away the excess.
Oh, I like that part.
And writing to me, a lot of times it's like that. I start going, but I didn't think that he was going to say this or
No.
this is it. Just this happens, so this happens, so
Yeah.
this happens, and it just
The pieces that you put in, because I know in the first and second book there were things that I described that she found in going through things, and at one point she finds the house that her mother was born in, and so there's little pieces and scrids of things along the way that I didn't realize I needed until the third book. And then I could bring them all together, and it was like, that's what that all meant,
Yeah.
So it was like there was a lot of plot twists and a lot of light bulbs going off at the very end for all the stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if people would understand it until you've actually written something or something.
Right,
But we get as much of a kick
Oh yeah.
out of the way things happen
Yeah.
as you might reading it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's sometimes you go, hey, that was wow.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming.
Right. Yeah. Well, the
And
other,
I wrote it.
Yeah, I know, because you're trying to do that all the time. You're trying. It's like people have asked. They go, okay, so now what's going to happen to all these people? And I said, you know what? They've all taken a vacation for now. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, no. I said, there's other people coming out. That
Right.
There's other stories that I've been working on while I was finishing these three. And I have notebooks, spiral notebooks for each of these books that I have. I have them, titled. I have the characters laid out, kind of outlined, and I know what the story is basically going to be about. So I can pick one up if I have that strange idea. I can just scribble a note, or
Right.
a detail, or a thought, or just anything like that. The one that I'm working on now is about a woman, and she goes to be a gardener in Long Island, and she is met with another curmudgeon. I think I must like strong female characters and a curmudgeon. That's me. And then there has to be a little mystery in there.
Yeah.
And but that, if you like that, and then I'll throw in a cat or a dog every once
Where
in
in
a
Long
while.
Island?
Greenport.
No kidding.
Right. My husband's in sales, so I was taking a walk one day when he was off, and I turned the corner, and here was this weather-beaten picket fence that had these beautiful roses, just these gorgeous, and I took several pictures of them. That will be the cover.
Yep.
And I went, wouldn't this be a great story? And I looked at the house, and the house is a little run down, and so it's like, so that's how the ideas come.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
really, truly
Well,
is.
Greenport's kind of dear to me. My family's from Long Island.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we, our family home's in Sag Harbor. So we have to pass through Greenport.
That's right, yeah.
From
Yeah.
the ferry,
Yeah.
and spent a lot of time in Greenport. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful little town.
Yeah.
So I'm just that's neat.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm working on my fourth book. It's set in Long Island.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying to sort of weave pseudo family history into the story.
Like a historical fiction.
Yeah, historical fiction.
yeah.
But some of the people will be real. Some of the incidents I remember stories that were told from, you know,
Right.
my grandparents, my great uncles and
Yeah.
uncles had told me, try to, you know, throw in these little quirky stories and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's fun, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have quite a family history too.
Well, yeah. My middle name is Herr or Herr, if you really want to be the German way, and that was from Pennsylvania Dutch. That's where my father was from Pennsylvania. But before that, the story goes that William Penn went to Germany, into the Rhine River area and into Switzerland and all that, and was looking for families to come to America and settle in Pennsylvania. And one of them was my great-great-grandfather. Great. There's probably a couple of more greats in there.
Yeah.
And what is fascinating is that the Pennsylvania Historical Society has preserved this home. So you can go and see the Hans Herr house from 1690 whatever. And I mean, and it's truly amazing to see what they have preserved and what they have continued to unearth. When they originally came, because obviously there wasn't a home, they had a lean-to by the side of the river. And they were, when I visited the last time, they were reconstructing what they thought the lean-to area that they lived in for a year
Oh,
while
wow.
they were building this huge home and this farm
Yeah.
and all of that. So it's really quite amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, you know, I mean, and to go back to that, the family, you know, it's like searching for your family, and my character was always searching for
Right.
her family. So it's like, you know, it's interesting how you can tie family into stories. I mean, that's what I think is so good about this book. They talk about the family, and they're just good-hearted people. You know, they're all pulling for each other,
Right.
with the exception of the villains that show up in
Yeah.
each one. Yeah, we're not, you know, but then everybody helps Ethel to overcome the villains or solve
Right.
the stories and, you know, make things right again. You know, at the end of the day, you know, everything turns out right at the very end. At the very end, everything
Yeah.
turns out right. Because we don't want to give away too much.
No.
I know people ask me, they say, well, what do you really want out of these books? And I want people to read them. I want them to enjoy them. And then if there's anybody that would want to take them from there to Hallmark, I'd be very happy, because I think they're that kind of, it's that kind of a story.
Right.
You know, that kind of a story that Hallmark would do, or any of those. You see a lot of the sub-networks, or I'm not sure what you call them now, the streaming ones, and they're looking for good stories.
Right.
They don't want so much everything that blows up, or, you know, another zombie apocalypse.
Right.
They're looking for feel-good stories.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people like to do that. My story is set in the late 70s, early 80s, so there's no cell phones, no computers, you know, which is, when you're writing a book like that, you have to figure out, okay, no, we didn't use a cell phone. We had to go to a payphone. You know, you didn't call 911, or if you did, there was a lot of research going in. When did 911 come in, and when did it come into Maine, in this little area?
Yep.
That, you know, so there's lots of little research things that go on.
You know, that happens to me a lot too, because, you know, writing about, you know, 1910 to 1920, when he built his castle and stuff
Right.
like that, you know, I wasn't even sure if there was telephones then.
Yeah.
You know, or how widespread they were. He did have one.
Yep.
But, you know, there's a lot of things that you know, well, how did they do this and how did they do that? And, you know,
Right.
and you have to keep going back and checking and trying
Right.
to. But I find it fascinating too, you know. You know, it's like the family thing we were talking about earlier, because we both have long family histories in this country.
Sure.
But I think I encourage everybody to write down stories.
Oh,
you know, it
yeah.
doesn't even if you're not going to write a book or whatever. You know, your like you say, your great grandchildren or their children, or, you know, even other people and stuff would be fascinating to hear. I think everything that we take for granted now.
Sure.
You know, even cell phones and stuff like that. I mean, in the future, who knows? You
Who
know
knows
what I
what's
mean?
gonna
That
be
might
there,
be
yeah,
like as
yeah.
antiquated as the
Right.
old rotary dial phone.
Right.
And, you know, and I always found it very fascinating talking to my, you know, the elders in my family who used to tell us stories.
Right.
You know, it was just like incredible. You know, people don't realize just how different things were.
Right, yeah.
A real quick story. You know, you'd appreciate this when you're talking about a family home. The house my father was born in was actually on the beach in Long Island in Amagansett. And in the hurricane of 1938, it actually came up off its, well, they didn't have foundations and
Right,
stuff
you
back
just kind
then.
of lift it up, yeah.
Floated up a hill that was probably, a quarter of a mile, but it floated 3 miles inland. And then when the waters receded, my family went, oh, look, a house. And they put it on rollers, got some horses, and they dragged it over and put it on our land, and
There you go.
we had a house. I mean, and you
Wow.
think about that today,
Yeah.
that couldn't even possibly
Absolutely.
happen
Yeah,
today.
somebody
you know
would
what
have
I
been
mean?
looking for that house.
Yeah, or,
right, yeah.
something. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah.
and I often wondered to myself, same thing,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So what are your future plans here? What are you working on now?
The one that takes place in Long Island, I've tentatively, it's either going to be the Rose Mystery of Long Island, or I was looking for another topic, but that'll be it for now.
Right.
I also have one called Father's Day, about siblings that come together as their father is dying on Father's Day.
Oh.
So, you kind of get little stories of each one of
Right.
them. It's more family.
Right.
Probably a little dysfunctional, I would assume,
Yeah.
as you can imagine
Yeah.
a family could be. One that I've been working on, and I will work on for many years to come, but it's going to be called Dinosaurs on My Windowsill, or How to Be a Grandmother When You've Never Been a Mother.
Yeah.
I've been married 3 times, but have never had children of my own. Have lots of stepchildren. So my current daughter, my lovely daughter, we're about to have our 4th grandchild now. When she had her first, and that was the first one for us, it was, well, how do we know how you're going to be able to take care of one? I mean, Dad had us, but you didn't. And I was like, I worked in the nursery of the hospital. There have been other stepchildren that were in a variety of ages and stuff. So it's stories about how they gave me some little trials to go through, and then the stories now about the grandchildren, and just the fun and just the things that they come up with, and it's just and because one day when I thought they had all picked up everything, and everything was gone, and you sit down and you open a book and a glass of wine to relax, and you look over and there's like a little plastic dinosaur. So I was like, that's perfect. That's the perfect title.
One quick thing, because we're running out of time, but I just want to mention this. You do play Mrs. Claus.
I do,
winter?
and yes, that's and I'm trying to actually write stories about Mrs. Claus, because I don't think she has gotten enough credit over the past 500 years. So yes, and I've actually talked my husband into. We now have a nice outfit for him to be Santa as well.
good.
So we are a team.
right.
Although begrudgingly, he's kind of curmudgeonly. See, again, the curmudgeon in my life, and the strong female character.
There you
of
go.
course.
Perfect. Keep it in character.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much, Jane.
well-
This was it was lovely talking to you.
Yeah, it was fun, Jim. Thank
And
you.
I encourage everybody to go out and check out Hook, Line, and Sinker. Sounds like a great story. Now that you've been on the show, I can read it.
There you go.
Indeed,
you will.
I always make a point of not reading until I have it, because I want you to tell me about your book. So that's it for Books and Beyond today. Thank you so much. I want to encourage you, remember, watch small. These little cable programs and stuff for people that, are in your community and all around you. Be kind to one another and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.